The last 50 years of the war on drugs has been a failure. Drug-related crime remains rampant. Consumption is high and unsafe. Yet, even as the mere suggestion of reform is shunned, a prevalent myth persists that if we simply fight harder, the war can be won.
Victory over drugs is our cause, a just cause. And with your help, we are going to win.
And with that in mind, let's explore what the next 50 years of the war on drugs may actually look like.
Our job is never easy because drug criminals are ingenious.
To understand how the war on drugs will fundamentally change, we must first examine how it has functioned up until now. Historically, the illicit drug trade has been dominated by cocaine, cannabis, methamphetamines, and opioids. 3 of these substances require vast acreages of physical plants. To produce cocaine, for instance, you need lots of coca plants that require a specific climate and a substantial labor force for planting, harvesting, and processing.
Vamos a hacer gases filtro. Vamos a filtrar su suciedad.
Once processed, the drug must be transported across oceans and borders through a high-stakes logistics chain. Every added mile and every middleman increases the likelihood of getting caught by law enforcement. And this complexity is why drugs are expensive. The end consumer is paying for the risk of the entire supply chain. But the future of illicit drug production completely bypasses this hassle. Welcome to the world of drug brewing, also known as biosynthesis. With this process, drug manufacturers can bypass the planting and harvesting part entirely, hijacking microorganisms like yeast to produce the compounds for them. A study published in Nature in 2019 demonstrated that scientists could achieve the complete biosynthesis of cannabinoids in something as simple as brewer's yeast.
Yeast cells are like tiny factories that can produce high-value compounds from low-value compounds. For thousands of years, various forms of sugar have been converted to ethanol by these adorable little microorganisms. Today, genetic engineering allows us to transfer genes from other organisms and integrate them into yeast to create new products.
And while this technology is already used to produce insulin and certain opioids, it remains complex. However, as the technology matures, the barrier to entry will collapse. We will eventually reach a tipping point where it is cheaper and safer to brew pure cocaine, for instance, in a local basement lab than to smuggle it overseas. And yield is the ultimate disruptor here. As long as you feed the yeast sugar, the output is nearly limitless. And furthermore, the 2019 study showed that altering the feedstock of the yeast could produce unnatural analogs, chemically modified versions of drugs that did not exist in nature. This could potentially spawn an entire new catalog of untraceable psychoactive drugs. The implication is a total revolution in how drugs are produced. If you can brew pure compounds in a tabletop bioreactor using sugar and water, the need for vulnerable plantations vanishes. Production becomes hyperlocal, decentralized, and invisible to traditional surveillance. One of the central tools driving this revolution is the CRISPR technology. And CRISPR is a gene editing tool that allows for precise snips in DNA, enabling researchers to knock out or insert specific traits. And besides drug brewing, this technology will likely be used to create stealth or ghost crops. We may soon see plants that are visually indistinguishable from local weeds, removing the visual markers that allow for satellite detection, for instance. And these crops could be engineered for extreme resilience, thriving in climates previously thought impossible. As production moves into the microscopic realm, the state's response must also change.
We do worse, and we get paid more. The government do better, and it don't mean no never mind. This shit right here, D, it's forever.
And we are entering the era of nanoforensics. The first line of defense is the Metal Organic Framework, or MOF.
What if you could take a material that's mostly empty space, like this 3-dimensional structure that's shaped like a cube that I've drawn for you here, but 1 gram of it actually has more surface area than an entire football field? That's actually not science fiction. In fact, those are called metal organic frameworks, or MOFs, MOFs for short. And these structures are redefining the way that we think about materials, from gas storage to clean energy and even drug delivery. And another exciting use case is actually in the field of sensors and electronics. And that's because MOFs can actually be conductive as well, and therefore they're emerging as identifying gases, pollutants, and even biomolecules.
By tuning the pores to a specific size and chemical environment, researchers can create sensors that can detect trace amounts of unnatural analogs at concentrations as low as nanograms per milliliter. In this future, these sensors won't just be in labs, they could be embedded in the very fabric of our city. Today, we are already monitoring drug trends through wastewater analysis. Law enforcement would be able to identify hidden biofoundries in real time, pinpointing its exact location. But detection is only half the battle. To secure conviction, the state needs a chain of custody. And this is where genetic watermarking comes in. And just as a digital file contains metadata, synthetic biological strains can be engineered with serial numbers hidden in the DNA. Changes to the DNA that don't affect the drug's potency but alter its genetic code. Scientists working with law enforcement could embed encrypted messages into the yeast itself. And if a seized substance contains the DNA breadcrumb of a specific laboratory strain, it could be traced back to its source with mathematical certainty. We are witnessing a transition from a war of attrition to a war of information. As traditionally field-grown drugs move into the laboratory, it also moves into the domain where state traditional advantages like physical force and territorial control are less effective.
And we will not stop until this poison is off of our streets in our country.
It is a conflict defined not by soldiers, but by biotechnology. Until we change our approach to drugs, the war will continue.
Don't you see what he's done? He's legalized drugs. He's lost his fucking mind.